All right. Okay, family, we are back with the Sunny Side View. Of course, you got your host, Sunny, and today I am so honored that my good friend, friend of 25 years, Miss Stephanie, is here. She and I were raised in the Midwest together. And so we had just an amazing time. We went to high school together. We're in yearbooks together. We have pictures with one of our other good friends, Landon. We were so excited in high school. Can you believe that 25 years later, here we are? So Stephanie is here. I wanted to bring her today because she has become, I mentioned it earlier, she has become like the grieving midwife over these last probably 5 years. I've had some losses, and during that time, Stephanie had some as well. And she's really created a community around grieving women. So, Stephanie, tell us a little bit about how you have become this grieving midwife.
Okay, well, growing up, my dad was a pastor, and I felt like he did a lot of funerals, and so I felt like I was familiar with people passing away and going to funerals. And so to me, I was like, well, that's just part of life, the funerals. But it wasn't really, my grandparents did pass away as I all of them passed away while I was growing up. And so I just, I kind of was familiar with people passing away. And then in 2017, my dad was actually diagnosed with cancer. And this was the closest person to me that he had pancreatic cancer. So it was pretty much a death sentence. And we were not prepared and ready for this diagnosis. But we did have, thankfully, we had 11 months. I know not everybody is lucky enough to have that time to make those memories. And but we also endured him having chemo and just getting sick and suffering, especially the last 4 weeks or so of his life. And then he passed away in November of 2018. And he was obviously the closest person to me that has ever passed away. And I had a lot of grief to deal with after that, and still dealing with years later. So
yeah, I think watching you guys navigate it was probably one of the most empowering things I've ever seen. And it's had such a impact on me that I, anytime there's a woman who is grieving, I immediately invite her to the Facebook group that you started during that process. So what made you think, as you were dealing with your own grief, what made you think to create a community for other women who were doing the same?
Well, as I started my grieving process, I was like, well, I already know I can name people that have lost their parents or someone close to them. And I thought, well, they have to be feeling similar to how I'm feeling. So I just thought, why isn't there a community that we can, share memories? And I knew, like, just even on my regular Facebook page, I was constantly talking about my dad or trying to get people to talk about him and remember him. But it was like, no one really, some of them didn't really want to talk about it. They aren't familiar with death. They haven't had that close relative or someone close to them that has experienced it. So they kind of would brush off my comments or things. So I thought this would be a good place to be able to chat about our loved ones. And
I think it's what you said. You said people were uncomfortable with talking about death, and it's such a powerful statement because you're right. I think a lot of times people don't know what to say. So the first thing to say is that it's going to be all right. And you're like, no, it's not okay. I'm not all right. I'm not fine.
Right.
And I feel like I learned that from your group, where it was just, you know what? I am not going to just act like it's no big deal. I'm not going to put this face on. I was telling someone, I think the first person that I lost in 2019, I believe it was my god brother. I was chosen, and he had been ill for a while, but when I it still was staggering, he had been dealing with some different things health wise. It still was like a shock to your system. Like you don't really expect not to be able to talk to this person, even if
Right.
even if you know that they're doing well or they're on medication or whatever the case may be. You don't expect to not talk to them, no matter how bad it is, I think. And I think that even as Christians, our belief system, believing that a miracle is always possible, you kind of always hold out that hope, like, well,
Yep.
I do know that there could be a miracle.
It's us.
Yeah. And so when we lost him, it was stunning. It was I couldn't even fathom just just in life. I just couldn't get past it for a minute. And for a long time, it would be the most random things. Like I would smell something and I would remember us hanging out in New York City, and then I just boohoo cry. But I learned from your group, and I tell people this now, not to wipe away my tears. Like I just would let them fall, because it was kind of like the moment where I realized that I was celebrating his life and his existence. It was okay to grieve in that aspect and not have to feel like, oh my goodness, I have to wipe my face, I have to look like I have it, I have to look like this, or it was like suddenly, oh, it's okay. I can do this. I can do this. And it was probably one of the most empowering things that I've learned about celebrating the lives of people and celebrating their upgrade. It has been, I can cry, and they deserve their memory, their life deserves to have this track of tears down my face,
Yeah.
So are there any things that you have learned just, from processing? I know now you're walking so many women through this. Are there any things that you have learned, maybe just, that you didn't know before? Are there things that you do?
Yeah, well, one of the things was after my dad passed was I didn't realize how grief could affect your body so much. That was such a big thing. And I try to tell other people, like, be aware and maybe go to the doctor and get checked out. I went to the doctor and I was like, I have this chest pain. I don't think anything's wrong. And they were like, you just have a broken heart. And I'm like, oh, I didn't know that was actually a thing. And so they checked my heart out and it was fine. But, and then I also got anxiety because with dealing with my dad passing, I had an anxiety that, like, what if something happens to me now? Like, and I have 3 young girls. I homeschool them, and my husband works from home, so I'm constantly doing things for all 4 of them. And so I'm like, that was my big thing, is what if something happens to me? And I just got this anxiety. And so, I went on some medicine whenever I need it for anxiety. It helps also with my broken heart. If I'm, those sad days, I can have that. And so that was a big thing. And just knowing that, like, I needed to take care of myself. I needed to be kind of selfish in that time and be able to grieve. And I went to therapy. Our church had a grief share program that we went to, and that really helped be able to talk through things and realize I wasn't alone too. So I think.
Do you feel like, as you're mentioning some of these other things, I realize, like, not all churches have like a grief share. So tell us a little bit about what that is.
Yeah. So Grief Share is actually, I think it's a national program in the United States. And it kind of depends on where it's at, but there's churches pretty much all over that host this Grief Share, where it's like I think a 12-week program where you come, you watch a video for about 45 minutes, and then you spend another half hour or more and be able to chat and talk through what the video was about, and you get to have a small group, and so there's questions asked. You know, you can talk however much or little you want to usually in that time. So that was a very good program for my mom, and I both went together. So
no, I love that. So I mentioned I lost my godbrother in 2019, and then the next year my aunt upgraded as well. So in 2020, and I always used when my aunt passed, my church, my pastor, he always says that you know, that saints don't die, they upgrade, right? And I don't know what it was. It lifted me up, because I always feel like death is so final.
right.
But an upgrade is like, oh, okay, you're continuing on, you know. And so I lost my aunt in 2020 very suddenly. And it's just like you said, you start, you know, you get anxiety. Those were two major losses back to back. And because they were back to back, it was like, you start thinking like, oh my goodness, what if this happens, or what? And some of it was good, like just making sure I had, you know, my financial things in order, making sure my life insurance was correct and ready. There were things as you go through and you plan funerals, and you plan or life celebrations, or you plan, you know, burials and things like that. It really made me think of things that I didn't want my kids to have to necessarily deal with, and just put things in order. Even that, like I've literally written out my whole life celebration. I wrote, you know, you know, what is it? Oh, I can't think of it now. The bio that, like,
your will.
Yeah, well, the bio that goes.
Yeah, obituary.
Yeah, it's not the eulogy, but it's like, I can't think of what it is. But
that sounds like my dad.
Yeah, like
he did a lot of that.
I was like, all you guys got to do is put the end date. Like that's it. Got everybody. And it really just encouraged me. Like, there are some things for us to do, those who are living, so that our families can grieve and just grieve, and have to worry about, you know, if financially they'll be able to do X, Y, and Z. You know, whatever your choices are. You know, if you're like, hey, cremate me. Listen, put it down, put it explicit, so your family doesn't have to worry about it, so that we can just celebrate and start that process of living without you here on this earth with us. And so as we started to see, I think probably the hardest thing was the obituary. That's the word I was looking for, was writing, you know, writing that obituary for my aunt, and having to try to find, you know, family history can be like all over, and I'm like, wait, what about Uncle so-and-so, and what about so-and-so? Like, it was too much.
And combining it in just a few paragraphs too, it's hard to condense life.
And count like how many nieces and nephews and like, it was just a lot. It was a lot going on. And so it just was an interesting, a really interesting thing, because you don't realize how much we can do now to make sure that our families are okay to go ahead and start the process of celebrating. If you can think of, what are a few things that you feel like people can do when someone has had a loss? What are some, you know, let's say 3 things that you feel like, you know, people could do to help people grieve without being nosy? Let me just start with that.
Right.
When people say, what happened? That drives me nuts. Like, why are you? It doesn't matter what happened. Leave these people alone. Let these people grieve how they gotta grieve. So number 1, don't ask people what happened. It's not your business. But what's some other things that you feel like would be something that help?
I think just being there and being like offering to help if they need something, but not pushing your way in. I think sometimes we try to get right in there. You know, food is always good because you forget to cook or you don't want to cook and things. And I think a lot of times people like lose weight, especially right after someone has passed, because they forget to eat or just so consumed with everything else that usually families need food.
Food is always needed.
And I think like too, like in our situation, I had young kids and I would want my husband with me or something. So having that, if they have young kids, offering to help take care of them, if there's, you know, if we have to go make funeral arrangements or whatever else, or even just having time alone after that, you know, it is helpful to have other people there. I know my youngest was she was only a year old. And so my in-laws were able to come over and take care of her. And they watched her during the funeral. They went to the funeral, but they were able to take care of her. So we didn't have to really worry about her running around everywhere.
Yeah.
And I think just not saying silly things too, like just keeping your mouth shut a lot of times.
Very important.
Like, unless you're just saying, I'm sorry and I'm praying for you, like there's not much else you need to say. Like
I started saying to people, there are no words, I'm here.
Right.
That's it. Like I just leave it at that.
Right.
I also got really into I think I was reading it might have been like a Rachel Held Evans book, and she was talking about like a sitting Shiva. And just like the Jewish custom of people coming together for like 7 days and just not saying anything, like they're just there, they're quiet, they're helping take care of the family, things like that. And I just thought about how in those times that I needed people to not say as much, but to just be there, like physically just be there, and maybe not necessarily in my space, but just there, like I knew you were there if I needed to be.
Yeah.
It's
and I think
go ahead, I'm sorry.
I think it's always good. We try to make a point to go to funerals if we can, like just showing them that we care and we're there, and sharing a special memory is also a really helpful thing.
Yeah, that's very key. I think what I'm starting to see, especially like with social media, is when someone upgrades, people asking for like pictures from their different, like if you have a picture with this person, and I love seeing it. It becomes like this yearbook of this history. I found out when my aunt passed, like I didn't even know my mom and I didn't even know that they were Grammy Award winners until I saw this random picture.
Oh my goodness.
I said, Mom, I didn't know you guys sang with the group when they won a Grammy. And she's like, oh yeah, like just you find out these like music, they got like afros. It was like the 60s. But yeah, like you start to see, those people, and you get to start that celebration, or that's really just that's another thing honestly people could do is, if people post things like that, I'm like, grab those pictures and make like a memory book. Like that's to me, like that's good. And also money. Like if you're going to give them a card, give them some money, because like you said, a lot of people are not going to work a lot, during that time. A lot of people are they're at home, but just not really having the inner strength to get up and cook something. So, are ordering out.
And sometimes funeral expenses and things too.
Like the funeral cost, it just is a whole process. And so, I think you're right. I think there are definitely other things we could do. Let me ask you this question. What do you regret not getting to do with your loved one? Is there anything that you regret?
Honestly, I wish I could do more, but like I said, we were lucky that we had those 11 months and we just made the best that we could with them. My dad, he wasn't really afraid of dying, and he would just be open and honest with us. I think he called us in several different times to have honest, heart-to-heart talks with us. We went on several vacations with him. Of course, sometimes he wasn't feeling the greatest, but we just tried to do as much with me. That was our first year homeschooling was when he got diagnosed. And so we had that flexibility. Like I would just say, okay, my dad actually feels good today. Let's drop all our schoolwork. Let's go eat lunch with him. Let's go, spend with him when we can. Who knows how long we would have. So I think making those memories, and obviously we don't know when everybody's going to pass away. Like we were lucky that we had that time, but making those memories now with people, taking pictures, those are so important to us now that we can't take any more pictures with him. So I think making those memories now, even if you don't know if someone's sick, is just so important to do.
Yeah, you shared that about making those memories. I probably get on my father's nerves. My dad got really sick in December, and he actually ended up technically dying. He was unresponsive for an hour and a half. They did CPR on him for an hour and a half, and then he had no brain activity for 4 days. So we were being encouraged to, unplug, to move on, to start doing these things. And my mom just refused. And ironically, 4 days later, his eyes opened. And, just earlier this week, my brother shared a video of him walking. He had to relearn how to walk because, if your brain's off for 4 days, it takes something. And so he's doing well. It's just like you said, I FaceTime him every day, and I'm always taking pictures, and I'm always like, and and I don't want it to get to that point where we, almost lose people. Like, just celebrate life where you are. Like, take as many pictures as possible and videos, and create those memories. We started our family. We're like, we're not buying anything else. We're just doing memories. We're doing experiences, and just kind of, living, in that manner. And so you're right. It's so imperative that we start now, with our families now. I know that, we have the community, right? We have the community that you have. So do you want to share just a little bit about anything quick about the community, so that as we're wrapping up, if anybody is experiencing something and they need a community, that they know where to go?
Yeah. So it's just a Facebook group. It's called The Grieving Woman. And so obviously mainly women, because we grieve differently than men. My husband isn't grieving my father as much as differently, and even my brother is grieving differently than me. And we're Christian women, usually encouraging each other. You can share like a little grief information about grief. And we just are there to encourage. A lot of times it's like right after someone has passed. And so, we're encouraging them and helping them through the grief journey. It's not always active, and then sometimes it's really active. It kind of depends. We talk about through anniversaries of people passing away or their birthdays, and share pictures or whatever you want to.
I love that. Well, thank you so much, Stephanie, for hanging out with me for this little bit of time. Thank you for letting me re-record after my headphones messed up.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
No problem. Thanks for asking me.
I just want to thank you for just walking me through the wave of grief. There are some up days and there are some down days, but I have consistently been encouraged by you and your ministry. And I loved your dad. He was the sweetest thing. But you are absolutely his greatest accomplishment, the way that you have continued on with the ministry. So thank you so much. Please kiss all of the kids and your husband, your mom, and your brothers. I'm just so excited to be connected with you. And anybody else, if you're experiencing any type of grief, don't hesitate to drop a comment. I'll make sure to connect any of those grieving women that are on a part of the Facebook community. We'll make sure to get you added into there as well. Otherwise, thank you so much, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you. All right.
Don't drift away, don't drift away, don't drift away. Don't slip away, don't slip away, don't slip away. Don't drift away, don't drift away, don't drift away.